Good evening, everyone. It's very good to see such a full church. It shows democracy is alive and well, and it's wonderful to see you. I'm David Glover. I represent Churches Together here today. I'm also rector at Hexham Abbey, just over the road. I'm going to try and ensure that today is like a fair contest, that we are allowing candidates to speak and that we can hear their views. Just to say that invitations went out, just one candidate declined an invitation to come. That was Nick Morfitt of the Green Party. He would like the following to be read out. These are his words he has to say. I'm afraid that as a county councillor for Humsoft, I'll be too busy representing the people of Humsoft Ward to attend any hustings this time around. As I'm sure you understand, I was elected to represent Humsoft Ward residents, and that must remain my priority. We have just obviously not expecting the fire alarm to go off. If it does go off, please, first of all, remain in your seats until further instructions follow. But the exits are the way you came in, and also the doors either side behind. You'll find the exit should the fire alarm go off. If you need the toilet, could you please use the toilet in the lobby, which is just past where you came in, so it doesn't disturb the front of the meeting. This is something about the format of the evening. We invited questions by email. 34 questions were received, and a small group have sort of put those questions into six questions we're going to be asked this evening. We tried to, well, I wasn't involved in that, but the group organised it by virtue of the topics that emerged through those questions. You may not hear your question asked exactly, but hopefully you'll hear the group, sort of the topic asked. You may not hear your question asked at all. It wasn't one of those top 6 groups. So that's the way we did the questions. We've also just drawn lots for a running order, and that's the order in which we will start the evening and the order which will be reversed at the end for the final summing up at the end. That's the way we're going to do it. Candidates now, in a few moments' time, are going to have 2 minutes to say whatever they want to say, and then we are going to move on to questions. And again, each candidate have 2 minutes per question to answer it, and John is our timekeeper at the front to keep things fair. We're not having a trap door opening if they go on beyond the 2 minutes, but the microphone will be switched off, so they will be kind of silenced. But it's just to try and ensure we do get through. I know 6 questions doesn't sound very long, but when you add them all up together, it will be our time. We aim to get to 8:45. At 8:45, we'll have the time of summing up at that point. Each candidate have 2.5 minutes to sum up at that point. So, we're going to begin this evening by inviting Joe from the Labour Party to address us for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for giving up your evening to be here on a lovely day. I'm Joe Morris. I am absolutely delighted and proud to be the Labour Party candidate for this constituency at the general election. I grew up in this constituency. I grew up in Hexham. I went to Queen Elizabeth High School. I went to Hexham Middle School, and I went to the SEAL School. I know that the Labour Party has never held this seat before, that we have no divine right to any vote, and I've been absolutely delighted for the past few weeks to go out there and speak to so many of you to try and earn your support and to be sent to Parliament as the first ever Labour MP for this constituency. I'm also proud to be representing a changed Labour Party, one that's putting service first, service to the country, service to our communities, and a Labour Party that will put the chaos of the last 14 years behind us. We've seen in recent days the betting scandal that's engulfed the Conservative Party. We've seen economic chaos in the past 4 years, seen the Liz Truss mini-budget undo so many people's hopes, so many people's dreams, and put jobs fundamentally at risk. We will deliver that stable economy that people need. We will bring opportunity to this constituency, and we will make sure that our young people can have that future. We will bring energy bills down, fight the cost of living crisis, and ultimately secure the fairer, greener future that our planet needs and that our young people needs. need. As I said, it's an honour to be your candidate. It's an honour to be here taking your questions, and I hope that at the end of this you'll feel empowered and enthusiastic to cast your vote for Labour on the 4th of July.
Thank you very much, Joe. I should have said at the beginning that we're not going to have any applause, please, during the hustings. We have a chance to applaud all the candidates at the end of the evening. So now we invite the Liberal Democrats to give his opening address.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me here. Thanks to those who've organised this event. I think some of you will be disappointed that I hadn't organised as a Liberal Democrat candidate an obstacle course across the Seal before we started proceedings. But instead, I'm here to talk a little bit about the Liberal Democrats, about me. There's obviously some really important questions for us to answer, which people have posed. A little bit about me. I grew up in the Tyne Valley. I had all my education, primary and secondary education in local schools. Currently live in Newcastle. I'm hoping to move back to the constituency over the summer. My professional background is in higher education. I'm a history lecturer. I work for the Open University and also St Andrews University. And some of you will know that until recently I was a local councillor in Newcastle, but now I'm looking to pursue some new interests and new challenges, including standing for Parliament here. In opening, I just wanted to say a little bit. I'm really angry, actually, really angry after 10 years of disastrous Conservative government. This has been a period of instability with 5 Prime Ministers, all of whom have failed in their different ways. There's been a dearth of progress in tackling the great challenges for society and a series of scandals that have affected public life and faith in politicians. And I think we need change, and we need a new way of doing politics. The recently published Liberal Democrat manifesto, A Fair Deal, has been widely welcomed as an alternative to the government programme. It's about supporting our communities, fixing our services. It's about Britain's place in the world, tackling climate change and repairing our relationship with our European neighbours. It's about a fresh start and a new way of doing politics and a new voting system to make things better. I'll talk about some of these more later perhaps, but for now I'll leave it there, and I'm very proud to be your candidate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. And now Chris, who's standing as an independent.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd first like to thank our host for inviting me here tonight to talk to you. My name is Christopher Whaley, and I grew up on a farm not too far away from here, and I've spent my whole life working and living in Northumberland. And during this time, I have seen a gradual decline in all of our services, from every sector, from our schools, our NHS, our police, and lastly of all, our local council. As successive governments over 60 years have eaten away the very fabric of our society, taking our money and wasting it on projects like HS2. So I'm standing as an independent candidate because up and down the country, people have lost faith in the government. There are now many more independent candidates up and down in every corner of Britain, standing for what we believe is to fix the country. And the reason for this is simple. Our hands are not tied. We work for you. We do not have a whip telling us how to cast our votes in Parliament. Now we know our government has lost its way, and it's lost the trust of the people. So we will be bringing back the trust by listening to you and doing what is right and is needed to fix our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. Now I invite Guy Opperman of the Conservative Party to address us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Guy Opperman. I believe I have a record of action over the last 14 years as the Hexham Constituency MP and a promise of more going forward. On schools, I fought to ensure that all 4 high schools got rebuilt. It took me over 12 years of effort. It includes the rebuild of QEH, and it is genuinely the case that many smaller schools have been improved and the funding formula has been enhanced. On business, I was the first MP to hire an apprentice. I then was proud to open the EGA Apprenticeship Academy, and have fought every single year to ensure that the jobs and employment in this community has got better. For the 11th year, we held the Hexham Jobs Fair. It has got hundreds of people into work. I'm very proud to commit to it. On the NHS, we see £15 million going into Hexham Hospital. There is investment going in also to Hutwhistle Hospital with plans for a care home that we're working on. There is huge amounts of support for the local businesses that we're trying to give. And I believe I have the experience to navigate and negotiate a brighter future for this community. Clearly, we have been through difficulties, whether it is the COVID war, the Ukraine war, COVID, or the issues of cost of living and inflation. I do believe, though, those times are improving. I do believe there are better days that lie ahead, where inflation is coming down, the economy is improving, and I believe in aspiration. I believe that your reach should exceed your grasp. I ask for your support on July the 4th, and I thank you for what you've given me so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. And finally, William Clouston of the SD Social Democratic Party.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. We've saved you from the Scotland game. So the SDP is a bit of a novelty here. We haven't contested Hexham before. We are a party of the conservative left. So very briefly, we are to the left of the Labour Party on economics, not difficult, and we are more socially conservative than the Tories. Again, not difficult. Now it's up to you who you vote for. But to help you along, I'm going to tell you 7 things that we believe in that you might agree with us on. So first, number 1, the family is the foundation of society. It needs our support. Number 2, we believe in the social market economy. The public sector and the private sector are not opponents. They are complementary parts of the same society. All successful states understand this. Number 3, the cause of the housing crisis is the deliberate destruction of state sector capacity in housing. The solution is to rebuild it. Number 4, mass immigration is a short-term fix, a drug, to plug holes in the labour market. What we need is some basic labour market planning. Train young people, give them skills they need. Number 5, a nation must have a border. If you let people enter your country unchecked and unvetted, you won't be a country for very long. Number 6, natural monopolies such as railways and utilities, electricity supply should be returned to public ownership. Number 7, Thatcherite economics, indifference to what is made where and by whom, has gutted British industry. It's eroded the tax base and begged us. We must reindustrialise. Finally, a constant theme of SDP thinking is that most of our difficulties have cultural causes. If nothing can be done about that, then nothing can be done about anything else. Vote SDP.
Well, thank you very much to all the candidates for their opening remarks. We're now going to come to the questions. We've ordered these questions in order of popularity of the questions that came in. So the number 1 will be the most popular area down to number 6. We'll alternate who answers the question first. The first one to answer this question will now be Nick from the Liberal Democrats. And I'm going to ask the question, and this is the first question. What do you think are the most important things we should be doing in the next 5 years, locally, nationally and internationally, to tackle the climate crisis? So, Nick, if you could answer.
Okay, well, this is probably the most important thing that we have to have regard to, because tackling climate change is a huge international issue. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the various ways in which I could respond. And one of the aspects I was interested in particular was what we can do locally. There's that phrase, isn't there? Think globally, act locally. And there are various things that we can do locally, from looking at what we eat, looking at buying locally, which helps with things like rewilding, if it's related to animals. We can look at plant-based foods. Those are things we can look at. We can look at how we travel. We can look at active travel. We can look at public transport. You know, maybe we can make less car journeys. Maybe we can look at cycling. These are all the sorts of things that we need to consider. Obviously, these things won't always suit everyone, but there are things that we can do. Looking at energy use, how can we look at reducing energy in buildings, which account for about 20% of the total UK's emissions? And household energy, how can we deal with that? How can we encourage people to do more? And how can we recycle and reuse goods more? These are the sort of things that we can think of. And I think there's an opportunity, I think, for us to work very much locally in the community to make things happen, working with community groups which are set up, working with local authorities. As an MP, I think you've got a very good opportunity for doing those things. And then, of course, there are many other things that we can do as well, related to some of the big issues like tackling climate change, net zero, important that we reach that, renewable energy targets of 90% by 2030, and we need to work internationally, I guess, around some of these issues too. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Nick. And Chris, where are you?
Thank you. So before we go headlong into tackling anything, we firstly need to look at all the data and all the evidence. And this data will show us exactly how much the climate has changed. And if so, we need to look at the biggest polluters on the planet to see if they can change their ways. Because the UK only emits 1% of the total global emissions. So lastly, we need to put that into perspective before implementing more taxes that these people of this country simply cannot afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Go.
So I think we need to maintain a national lead whilst also being practical on the journey that we're going on. So I was proud to vote for the Paris Climate Change Agreement in the House of Commons. I was proud that the UK was the first country of the G7 to legislate to get to net zero by 2050. And I was proud as a minister to bring in the ESG regulations, which are environmental, social, and governance regulations that influence how it is everything from local authorities to pension funds invest your money with a view to ensuring that climate change is taken into account. It is a massively important change. The second bit, though, would be that we need to be practical on the journey, and that means that we will need oil and gas up to and including 2050, and we shouldn't cry away from homegrown energy on an ongoing basis, particularly given the impact of what's going on in Ukraine and in Russia. The other bit is we must invest in more new nuclear. We have been too slow under successive governments for too long. We need a lot more nuclear power stations. I think that we look at the international example. It is patently clear that the UK and the EU are leading the way, but that India and China are lagging well behind. You have to continue the pressure on that. That has to come from the UN. It has to come from the various OECD and other organisations. That pressure needs to keep going. And finally, locally, there's huge efforts being made to improve the climate change in this particular county in a whole host of ways, from the county council downwards. And on solar farms, I'd make two quick points. Clearly, where there is local support, like in Lincoln Hill in Humsouth, they should go ahead and you're not affecting particular quality land. But where it is not supported by the local community and it is affecting both Greenbelt and quality farmland, as is happening with the Exogen application in Whitstable, you should not support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. And now William Claxton.
Thank you. Locally, try and buy local products, reduce food miles and so on, try and plant trees if you can. Insulate your homes, obviously. We'd be better off if we had a planning system that reduced the demand for travel. We don't actually. We have a planning system that increases it, and that's an issue. Nationally, it's quite obvious what we need to do. It's not being done. We need to build some nuclear power stations. That's the only way to provide the base load to stop us consuming all this gas and other hydrocarbons, a lot of which is imported, by the way. 47 billion a year wrecks the balance of payments, makes all of you poorer. We need to do that. One of the reasons people are exasperated in the public is that the government is very good at taxing and regulating, not very good at doing it. So when you want things done well and on time, poor. The Tories actually closed British nuclear fuels in 2010. A couple of years later, they were crawling around to the Chinese and the French to build them for us. That's disgraceful. We have the capacity. We started this industry. We can do it if we want to do it. And also another massively important thing is reshoring industry, which I'm opened up with. A very, very good way to decarbonise is actually to buy more products, make more, and sell more here. That's the priority.
Thank you very much, William. And finally, on this question, Joe Morris of the Labour Party.
Thank you. So environmentalism and fighting climate change is one of the things that first drew me into politics. I don't just want to be our first ever Labour MP, I want to be our first ever green-minded MP as well. The main thing to do that we can do to make a difference on climate change is to evict this Conservative government. They've got a legacy of failure. You know, this is the party that removed insulation policies that the last Labour government left in place, that drove up people's energy bills, and ultimately, you know, they are the ones that squandered the head start that we had on renewables. We want to get to clean power by 2030. We want an end to the sticking plaster politics that's defined this government in the last 14 years. We recognise that the green agenda is fundamentally a jobs and an economic growth agenda as well. It's how we secure the good, clean, highly skilled, highly paid jobs of the future and try and bring as many of those jobs back to the North East as possible. I've noticed that Rishi Sunak, and the government that you serve, guy, has already started to drag climate change into the culture wars, which is simply disgraceful, quite frankly. We need to establish that political consensus again, that fighting climate change is the paramount responsibility of this government.
Thank you. I know it's hard to resist, but could we please restrain to our call to the end of the meeting? It gives a chance for this to be a hustings where we hear people's views fully, and then we can take those views and repeat it about how we vote on the day. If we could move then to the second of our questions, which is going to be first of all responded to by Chris Whaley. And the second question is, do you agree that child poverty in the North East is running at unacceptable levels? What is your understanding of the cause or causes, and what will you do to tackle this? So if I can invite Chris to respond first.
Thank you. Yes, I think we all recognise that child poverty is a problem throughout the UK, primarily because of the past policies, lack of funding and lack of care and understanding from past governments. Firstly, we need to put the right people in place, and we need the funds to support these people. We need to support these families better, and we need to provide a better education for everybody, so this doesn't happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Invite Gail to respond.
So clearly, any aspect of child poverty is wrong, but at the same stage, we have to analyse the causes and we have to look at how we're supporting people. We have never spent as much as we presently do on welfare, on the degree of support that is given by the state to those in difficulties. Those are at record levels. We continue to expand universal credit and the support and the work that has been done by the excellent people at the Hexham Job Centre. We continue to expand childcare. It will go up to 30 hours from September of this year. That is a massive assistance to combat child poverty and assistance to parents on an ongoing basis. We continue to improve and enhance the training regime to ensure that there is opportunities for all, whether that is the jobs fair, whether that is the work by the Job Centre, whether that is by the support and the assistance, I will keep going, whether it's the support or the assistance that the state gave to the tune of £96 billion post-COVID, when we clearly had some difficulties in respect of the inflationary and the cost of living impacts. Such things are very hard to deal with. It is not easy, but the £96 billion of support is something we're now paying back. The key thing to do is to get inflation down. Inflation is the worst tax of all, particularly on those who are low paid. And it is absolutely the case that getting inflation down in a post-COVID, post-Ukraine war world is absolutely the most important thing. Finally, I would look at the education opportunities that exist in this community here. We have obviously reformed the way in which the schools are. We've built them, we've provided better opportunities for apprenticeships and training, and a greater degree of funding. And it is a great support to our schools that we hope to provide people with the future they deserve.
Thank you very much, Guy. Now, William, from the SDP.
Thank you very much. There are many causes of child poverty, but a fundamental cause is the disintegration of the married family in this country. Very few people will talk about it, but that is what the social science says, that's what the data says. A British 16-year-old is more likely to have a screen in their room than a father in the house. And if you don't look at the data, if you're not honest about it, you can't possibly solve the problem. We have policies to support the family in the tax system and in housing particularly. You've got to rebuild the foundations. But another cause is the industrialisation itself. So if you look at the history of this region, the foundation of society, not just family, but the foundation of society was the industrial wage, the industrial job. And as recently in the decade that I was born, in the 60s, you could raise a whole family on 40 hours of industrial work. You can't do that now. And the reason is that we pursued free trade purism. We've closed the factories have closed, the drug dealers moved in, and we've wrecked our society. Guy is right. We spend a lot of money on welfare. But the reason we do, in towns like Hartlepool, we've got 20% of adults on out-of-work benefits, is because we've lost the industrial job. Unless we're honest about it, we can't rebuild it. That is the cause. Whatever gains the Thatcherites thought they would get from free trade have been wrecked by mopping up the blood. That's the truth.
Thank you, William. Now, Joe Morris of the Labour Party.
Thank you. Well, first of all, child poverty in this region is scandalous. It's devastating. During this campaign, I've campaigned across the constituency. We've seen the real impact of rural poverty as well as the impact of poverty in our town centres and in towns along the Tyne Valley and in the new areas out to the constituency. We need to bring high quality jobs into the area. We need to make sure that we can get good jobs into people's hands, but we also need to address the fact that we have a government that's done nothing to address either the causes or the symptoms of child poverty. We've got a government that is committed to pulling investment out of the North East. We've lost £2 billion from our public services since 2010 in this region. That is a genuine war on the North East, to be honest. We need to ensure that we have proper public services brought back, supported by the growing economy and the stable economy that only Labour are proposing to provide. I know, Guy, that we're talking about apprenticeships, but I think we have a fall in apprenticeship take-up in this constituency of 67% since 2010. So you can name all the figures that you like, but it's simply not good enough. We want to ensure that we have breakfast clubs in the schools that make sure that children are getting their nutrition as much as they can. And we need to fundamentally address the complete lack of industrial strategy that we've seen under the Conservatives for the last 14 years.
Thank you very much, Joe. And now, finally on this question, Nick Carter, the Liberal Democrats.
Okay, well, child poverty being at record levels is a scandal, and it shows the great failure of the last decade of Conservative government. Something I feel very strongly about. When I was a local councillor, one of my roles was Cabinet Member for Children's Services, and I saw a lot of consequences of child poverty. It's a scandal that the government manipulated the definition of child poverty, and even so, it is still at record levels. It needs central government intervention with targeted support to families and areas of greatest need. And a lot of that funding has disappeared. The causes of child poverty are, of course, multi-dimensional. They're related to things like low income and unemployment. Interestingly, low income very much now, with families having much lower incomes because of low-paid jobs. That's a real issue. And it needs to be tackled on a multi-agency basis. When I was portfolio holder, I know how important that was. We had something in place called Think Family, which is about supporting the whole family. If you support the whole family, then you can help to reduce the effects of child poverty and lessen child poverty. You know, with access to training, jobs, family hubs and support that comes through that, health and social care, school attendance, provision of SEND and alternative provision in schools, all of this will help, sexual health advice, many other things, all relate to child poverty. And if we're really serious about tackling child poverty and tackling poverty generally, we need much more action, and we need to enable councils and agencies working across the constituency to do much better. We need government support for that. So I want to see so much more done.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for those responses. We come to our third question, and Guy Opperman will be invited to respond to this one first. What do you consider to be the single most critical need for Hexham constituents? And if elected, what steps would you take to address it?
I don't think there's one particular thing. I don't want to disagree with the question, but I don't think there's one single thing to address this constituency or this community. But I do think there are certain key points. You need to support your key employers and help your SMEs, whether that is supporting EGA here or Essity in product. You need to continue to improve our schools. We have rebuilt all 4 high schools. That is something I'm extraordinarily proud of. We have gone on to take care of many of the middle schools and improve those. We're working on some of the smaller schools. We're addressing the fairer funding formula on an ongoing basis. You need to upgrade and improve your high street. Clearly in Hexham, we have had the Heritage Action Zone that has seen the work done here in a whole host of ways, some of which took a little while, I know, but it is very important that we have this investment in our high street. We need to ensure that public services, like Hexham Hospital, are improved and enhanced. It's £15 million going into Hexham Hospital as upgraded and improved on an ongoing basis this year. You need to keep the cost of living and inflation down, which is utterly key. Without ensuring that you have inflation down, you are in desperate difficulties. And finally, you need to maximise employment and skills. I'm very proud of the 7,000 new apprentices in this community since 2010. I'm very proud of Jade, who worked for me for 4 years to become an apprentice office manager and went on to bigger and better things. I'm very proud of the jobs fair we've done for the last 11 years to promote skills and opportunities in the community, and that's what I will try to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. William.
Thank you. There are lots of things locally which you can focus on. Obviously, the agricultural hinterland is vastly important. We just put a green paper out, Fields, Farms and Food, about that. You can find it very important. I think public realm is very important to us in this constituency. We know we live in a beautiful place, and it must be loved and it must be cherished and cared for. But I don't think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue is the thing that no one will talk about, which is this country's massive trade problem. In the 60s, it was at national news, trade things in the national news. We don't talk about it now. We're encouraged to think it doesn't matter because we sort of drunk the Kool-Aid, the liberal Kool-Aid. It doesn't matter having a large trade deficit. It's a bit like a drug dealer saying to you use it doesn't matter, it's fine. No, it's a real problem. We haven't run a surplus of goods in trade since 1982, and that was during a recession. We constantly run up these massive trade deficits, 80 billion, 90 billion a year. And you can only pay for your imports in 1 of 3 ways. You can export something, or you can sell something you already have, or you can issue debt. And the last 2 is how we pay for it, basically. We just get it poorer. No one will talk about it. I promise you, it will beggar everyone in this room and all your families unless we grapple with it and deal with it. An industrial strategy would help. But I think it's a cultural problem, and I've talked about this a lot. It's a cultural problem because no one wants a politician to tell you what is true. And what is true is all of us save too little and spend too much. That's what we do. We produce too little and consume too much. And unless we can deal with that and face up to it and get politicians to tell you the truth, we'll never cure it. Next time you're in the supermarket, don't buy Normandy butter, buy British butter.
Thank you, William. Now, Joe Morris of the Labour Party.
Well, the main crisis that affects this area is the cost of living crisis that affects everyone. It doesn't matter if you live in central Hexham, it doesn't matter if you live in the most rural parts of this very rural constituency. You are hit by the cost of living crisis. You're hit by the result of the Liz Truss budget that only one person on this panel celebrated in a lengthy thread on Twitter. And first of all, I'd like to know how we get inflation under control with £71 billion of unfunded spending in the Tory manifesto. I think 12 billion of which you've already spent. In terms of how we're going to address the cost of living crisis, though, we've already brought forward our proposal for GB Energy, the publicly owned firm which will bring energy bills down for everyone. and secure our long-term energy future, contributing to the fight against climate change, bringing good jobs to the entirety of the UK, ensuring that we have a proper chain of highly skilled, highly paying jobs that go throughout the UK, bring wealth into the economy, and ultimately put money back into people's pockets. I'd also like to know, in terms of the high street regeneration, how long is the bus station completely derelict? You know, if you've been on a job for, what, 8 years, you don't then expect thanks for doing that job. You know, that is an eyesore that needs to be sorted and hasn't been sorted. So I don't think that the Conservative Party can claim they've done much for the high streets in Hexham when you look at the empty shops and the fact that many, many areas in this constituency used to have banks and no longer do. So ultimately, the cost of living crisis is the most important issue affecting the constituency. It's the thing that we need to solve. It's the thing that only the Labour Party's got a plan to solve by bringing inflation under control with a fully funded and fully costed manifesto.
Thank you very much to Joe. And now, Nick.
Okay, well, it seems that all of us have come up with a slightly different flavour, which I think relates to the question, which is very difficult to answer because there's so many things. The one I decided to go for was the cost of adult social care, which is a spiralling problem. It's a great scandal that this hasn't been addressed, and it's a great scandal that no parties have actually come up with a solution. Many of us will require social care at different times of our lives. Some of us will be in receipt of social care. We'll know people who will know family members and friends who need our support. And often much of this is left to hard-pressed local authority budgets to actually deliver. There's also means testing, which can be seen to be unfair, and people have to use their savings, sell their homes, and others, or go without the support that they need. And I think that's a great scandal, and we need to be addressing this issue. So what can we do? We can lobby on behalf of cross-party support for reform in the short term, more funding from central government. Local authority budgets, sometimes about 80% of local authority budgets are, for social care, which is crazy. We can meet, whoever's the MP after the next election can meet with local authorities and service providers to see what can happen. We can, above all, set up a national care agency to ensure that standards and sufficiency of care are consistent, because there's a postcode lottery around all this. It can be one part, even one county, getting better support than somewhere else. That cannot be right. We need to establish a national care agency, so I've mentioned that. We need to have free personal care for the most vulnerable, which is one of the Liberal Democrat policies. Peer premium for young carers. A lot of young people are actually carers. And we need to, above all, establish a national health and care service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. And finally, on this question, Chris Whaley.
Thank you. Well, from what we've been told, and I've been hearing from people, there are a lot of issues, like you said, cost of living crisis, our shops, they're closing, banks, and the thing that keeps popping up is jobs. There doesn't seem to be enough jobs for the young people of this country. I support the policies of the Alliance for Democracy and Freedom, and they believe that there needs to be a start right back from school. We need to change the curriculum to encompass where these jobs will be in the future. It comes back to food production, farming, because Hexham is based around a rural area, and we have many rural industries around this area. So we need to put this right, and we need to start straight away by getting more jobs in our NHS, our schools, our police, and all the council services that's been neglected throughout the years. Get the roads fixed, get the roadsides and hedges properly managed. So there is a lot of jobs which could be made there, and we intend, or the area party intends, to put these matters right as soon as we can get into power. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all the candidates for answering that question. We now move on to the fourth of our questions, and William Cranston will be invited over to answer this question first. The fourth question is, What are your views about assisted dying, and would you support legislation that legalises assisted dying in the United Kingdom?
Thank you. I'm a Democrat, but I'm going to argue against the popular position. I think the most recent figures that I've seen say that about 72% of the British public favour assisted dying. I'm not one of those people. I'm concerned about it philosophically because it creates two classes of people. One class of person who we think should live, and another who we think should die. And I think it will lead. The defenders of this policy will say that you have safeguards and won't need to slippery slope. I'm very concerned that it will. How many times have we heard that in public policy? You read cases in Canada, in the Netherlands, and other places where even someone in their 20s went to the doctor with depression and was advised to consider suicide, assisted suicide. I can totally see the arguments on the other side. I just take a philosophical position against it. I think many of us, most of us probably have had family members that have been through serious illness and palliative care. I think palliative care works as it is, and I would stick with that. So that's my position. It's not the popular position, it's what I believe.
Thank you, William. And now, Joe Morris.
Thank you. So first of all, on assisted dying, I'm very glad that Keir Starmer was committed to bring it to a free, unwhipped conscience vote during the next Parliament. If elected, I would vote for that change in the law. I've thought about it at length. I've spoken about it with friends, family, and my view is that if I was in a position where I want to be in control of my own destiny, I would want that option. I understand we need to make sure that the legislation is properly drafted, that there are appropriate safeguards in place, but ultimately, and I think in Ponteland, Guy, you spoke quite movingly and very well about this. We do need to recognise that there is currently a two-tier system in place where you can go to Switzerland if you have the means. We need to make sure that we change the law, but we need to ensure that we have that well-drafted legislation in place, and we need to improve and make sure that that legislation is improved in the drafting of it. Parliament needs to exercise its role as a safeguarding, scrutinising chamber for that legislation. I completely understand for many of you that will be perhaps difficult to hear, but that is my belief.
Thank you very much, Joe. And Nick of the Liberal Democrats.
This is a very difficult issue because it's an issue of moral conscience, and I hope that if it does come to Parliament, as we think it might do in the next Parliament, that it is a free vote. I'll preface what I'm going to say with something I said in Ponteland, which my mother has a very good friend who is on a national committee of the Right to Die Society. And I've had many conversations with him, and I believe that people who believe in the right to die are motivated by the most moral principles and with the person in mind, with people in mind who are in distress because they are reaching the end of their lives. My situation, though, personally, is that I worry about legislation that comes forward. Not so much the motivation of those who bring the legislation forward, but what happens after that. So I would say that I would look at the legislation, I would think very carefully about it, I would make my decision on the basis of what was in front of me and listen to views of constituents and others before making that decision. But my moral feeling is that this is difficult for me personally, but I'm prepared to listen to alternative perspectives.
Thank you very much. And now, Chris Wayne.
Thank you. Again, for me, this is a very emotive subject, which can bring out the best and worst in a lot of people. At Ponteland, I couldn't give a view. I didn't really know enough. My own personal opinion, if you're asking, is that we all should be allowed to make our own decision surrounding our own life. But I know this is sometimes very complicated. So if there were to be a change in the law, then it would have to be strict protocols, and there would have to be the correct legal structure put in place to prevent any misconduct in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And then finally on this question, Guy.
So I massively support this particular issue. I massively support this particular issue. I believe in the life of your choice and the death of your choice. So I, in 2011, had a cancerous tumour at the left side of my head. It was the size of a lady's fist. A gentleman surgeon in London cut it out with a chainsaw, not a fan of them anymore. Literally stitched me back together, and I was very lucky, very, very lucky. But I also was on a cancer ward for a great period of time and saw a lot of patients, and have had many of my family lost to cancer. If you had £10,000, and there are people in this audience who have that, you could get in a van and drive to Lucerne to a business park where Dignitas exists, and you could pay for your life to be taken from you. But we don't have that facility here. So we have a law that allows for the wealthy to be able to take their life in their circumstances, but not for those who don't have those means. That cannot be right in 2024. Of course, I'm conscious I'm in a church. I'm conscious I can see 2 or 3 people who've come to see me who are strongly opposed to this. I'm conscious of faith, I'm conscious of the Hippocratic Oath for doctors. But it is unquestionably the case that you can introduce this legislation, which is always on a free vote. So all abortion matters, stem cell research, assisted dying is always a free vote in the House of Commons. And I voted strongly for it in 2015 when I walked through the lobby with Ed Miliband, the last 2 of us to go through, talking about how it is we could potentially bring this through. It is ultimately, though, a possibility that we can bring this legislation forward. It comes down to having the free will to determine how you end your life. At the present stage, notwithstanding amazing palliative care, notwithstanding Charlotte Straker and various other organisations do incredible work, you don't have that free will. And that is not right. It is 2024, it is time for a change of the law.
Well, thank you to all our candidates for answering that question. And we now move on to our 5th question. Back to Joe, who's going to answer this question first when we get there. And the 5th question is, do you agree our nation faces a massive housing crisis? What policies would you seek to pursue to ensure young people in Hexham today can have housing security?
So it's the first part of the question. Yes, I do. It's particularly acute in this constituency and this part of the world. When I think back to my 6th form at QE, I think the amount of people who wanted to remain locally but couldn't because they simply couldn't find a home that they needed. When I speak to people who want to have downsize in Hexham but who can't find a bungalow that they need for their circumstances. So we do face a huge housing crisis in this country. Labour Party has a plan to ensure that we build the homes that we need, that we see an end to, I think, 5 years of the Conservatives pledging to build 300,000 homes since 2019, failing every year. We have already taken a difficult decision to pledge to build those homes. We have spoken about the tough choices that it needs. We will ensure that we protect the green belt, that we protect areas of natural beauty, that we protect wildlife, and we don't continue the Conservative mistakes of simply allowing developers to parcel off the best bits of green belt land and to build huge, unaffordable housing estates on that land. We will ensure that developers are held to account properly, that we prioritise the brownfield, that we look at the green belt land that is perhaps not green belt. If you showed you or I a picture of it, you would say, that looks like a disused car park. That looks like low quality land. That looks like the sort of thing that actually we could be giving young families a chance to get onto the housing ladder and to contribute to our community too. That's what we want to do. You know, I know there's been a lot of noise made around the Green Belt. We've all received our targeted Facebook posts, targeted leaflets about Labour's plans. I can assure you it's based on some pretty deliberate misreading of our manifesto. You know, when you look at the Tory record on the Green Belt, it's one that's failed to protect it and has failed to build the homes that we need. So we do face a massive housing crisis. We do need to build the homes. Labour will build those homes, and we will do so in a way that respects local need, local autonomy, and protects our countryside. Having grown up here, I would never do anything to endanger the beautiful countryside of Hexham.
Thank you very much, Joe. And now, Nick Cox.
Yes, well, I think it's a great shame. I think it's a terrible shame that young people today face a situation very different from previous generations in relation to access to affordable housing, get on the housing ladder. Things are going in the wrong direction. So we need to do much more for young people. We need to deal with the housing shortage. We want to, Liberal Democrats would seek to build new homes, but with, in fact, Joe was alluding to, with meaningful engagement with communities. We need to work closely with communities to define their needs. Local plans are quite a good way of getting communities involved in the planning process so we can see what we can do. We have a target for building 380,000 homes a year in the UK, including 150,000 social houses a year, and through some new garden cities as well, which will have green spaces, biodiversity. There's much that we can do like that. And we also need a fairer deal for renters as well. Not everyone will be looking to buy properties, banning no-fault evictions immediately, making 3-year tenancies default, and creating a register of licensed landlords. I know how important licensing landlords can be from my local government experience. It makes a huge difference. This could be developed into a national scheme. We need to give local authorities, including national park authorities, the powers to end the right to buy. This has been a terrible policy. It means there isn't sufficient social housing. We need to reverse that in areas of greatest need. And we can incentivise the planning process for social and affordable housing in new developments. And we can also have more diversity. You may have heard of lifetime homes, which means that people can live in their home for their entire lives. It can be adapted as they go through life. We need to look at those kind of arrangements as well. And we need to avoid the possibility that we will let down the next generation of young people. We need to take action now, and it's really urgent.
Thank you very much. And now, Chris Whaley.
Thank you. Yes, I think we can all agree there is a definite housing crisis. Again, it's throughout the country, and it's not just in Hexham. This comes from a national scale problem, and it's because of the policies that's been put in place for the last 14 years. In the last 14 years, the population has risen by 6 million people, and of that, 85% has been from migration. So we need to look at the 5 million people that's come into the country that we're now having to house, and where these people are being housed. So is the government spending too much money and time building homes and houses for illegals, or should they be looking to provide more affordable housing for the people of our area? And going forward, we need to look at the policies about stopping the illegal migrants from coming in, because that is the problem, not the housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Guy Oppen.
The most important thing you need to have is a local plan. That is what Northumberland County Council have passed. That is what you have democratic accountability for. The local plan is something that is consulted on, worked on, and actually then voted on, so that you actually have some degree of control over it. What you don't do is you don't have regional spatial strategies set in Westminster imposed on local communities. That is the choice that is facing you here. The second issue is that you then need to support the brownfield sites. And you look in this community and you look at the Prudhoe Hospital site, where there are hundreds of homes, many of which are affordable. You look at the St Mary's site, where there are hundreds of homes, many of which are affordable. You look at the police site in Pontina, where there are nearly 1,000 people living there now. It is a massive development of key brownfield sites in this community. That is what you should do, that is what you should focus on, whilst then looking at the infill that you can do in the local communities elsewhere. You also need to look at the various manifestos, and I believe there is a very clear difference in this. We support very strongly the Help to Buy. We support a reduction and elimination of stamp duty up to £425,000. That is a massive incentive for those who want to get on the housing ladder. And clearly, no stamp duty makes a massive difference in terms of purchase. I finished on the final point, which is ensure the quality is good. There is great work being done to ensure that middle school in Hexham is a mixed-use site in a whole host of ways, with elderly living there that in a particular context at the bottom of the site. Utilisation provided Sports England agreed to what is going on the old sports pitches of those particular land for particular housing, and then when the old middle school site itself, which is listed, ensure that we've got the right development there. That's the sort of thing we need to do. I do genuinely believe, I'm afraid, that there is a difference between an organisation and officials who say, only this week has told the Guardian that they wish to flatten the green belt, and those who wish to promote it on an ongoing basis.
Thank you very much, Guy. Now, finally, on this question, William Preston.
Thanks very much. Is there a housing crisis? Yes, it certainly is. There's a crisis of affordability and availability. I told you what the cause was, and it's the deliberate destruction of the state sector. The private sector has never created enough houses on its own. It builds about 160,000, 170,000, 200,000 in a really big year. It never builds 300, it can't. I get totally exasperated. I spend about 2 days a week in SW1, read all the think tanks, and they'll talk about the zonal plan, or brownfield sites, but they're blind to the reality. The private sector can't do. You've got to build capacity, you've got to get the state back in business if you're serious about it. And it is serious. And the older people in this room will have kids, probably that are in the big cities, Manchester, and, London, and are spending about half their salaries on a little box room. And it blocks family development. People want to pair up and start a family, they can't. So anyone seeking election calling themselves a Conservative doesn't look at this seriously, isn't really a Conservative. STP policy is quite straightforward. I asked the policy team to give us 3 things. I wanted entities to create the houses, I wanted the funding and the powers, and they give us all 3. So read it, please read it. The solution is to create development corporations in every single county. Give them the powers, give them the funding. The funding is a little bit technical. We would tax planning gain, which is the uplift in value that you get on greenfield sites for getting planning consent. We're not greedy, tax it at 50%. That would raise about 8 billion, and we could start the business. It's true, landowners probably wouldn't like it, some developers wouldn't like it. There probably would be fewer Lamborghinis and yachts, but it's a price we're prepared to pay. So we must take this seriously. As a local politician here, I chair Corbridge Parish Council. I'm honoured to do that. I've done it for 5 years or so. And we have built 4 council houses with my friend across party lines. Nick Oliver helped us do this. We built 4 council houses because we wanted to. That's why it happened. And you've got to get people, elect people who want to do these things, and they might actually happen.
Thank you very much for answering that. As we come to our final question, which Nick will answer first. It's a fairly involved question. I'll try to be as careful as I can around educational needs. Many would argue that children with special educational needs and disabilities in Northumberland are not suitably supported in school settings, and children unable to attend school are not provided with suitable full-time alternative educational provision, as is their lawful right. Northumberland County Council routinely does not meet 20-week education and healthcare plan assessment deadline. That's according to the person asking the question. Do you recognise this as a crisis, and what actions will you take?
Okay, this certainly is a crisis, and it really is another scandal. I know it has got far worse since COVID for all sorts of different reasons. It's actually quite a complicated issue to deal with, but let me be absolutely clear. All children with SEND should be provided with timely support, otherwise it can damage their futures. And one of the most important thing we can do for children and young people is to ensure they have decent life chances. This is really important. Hard-pressed teachers and educational staff in schools are doing a really good job, I think, by and large, with really under-resourced, and support and service can vary by postcode. You know, even within county, between local authority, it's just not right. This shouldn't happen. The situation is so bad, there's even a waiting list for actually being assessed. It's not just the assessment time, it's the waiting list. The government needs to talk to the agencies locally to see what can be done to make things better. And it's no good the government just saying, here's a bit of money for this to schools, without really understanding what the key problems are. So Liberal Democrats do have some things which I think would help with this. Giving local authorities proper extra support to reduce the amount that schools have to pay towards the cost of a child's education, health and care plan would be really important. Currently what sometimes happens, when the government gives some money, they request that the schools, basically through the pot of money that's used, put some of that money that they have in their pot back into the mainstream. But it just really isn't, it's just not right. They need to establish a national body for SEND to fund support for children with very high needs. And we need to restore the responsibility for education, bringing the power back to local authorities as a strategic education provider so that they can plan the processes that need to be put in place, the admissions procedures, in-year admissions. When I was scrutiny chair in Newcastle, we looked at one of these issues. It's really complicated trying to find providers. For instance, if you set up a special school, you have to find a provider. It takes ages. The local authority should have more control over these things. And until we get real about this, this is not going to change. So I think there's a lot of practical things that we can do, but it is an absolute scandal. We must do something to help these children because they need our support. They are a priority for us.
Thank you very much, Nick. And now Chris Whaley.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there is a definite crisis in Northumberland, and it's all over the country again. I have first-hand knowledge of this, as my wife is an early years lead teacher in Northumberland. And she's given me 6 points that need addressing. One is there is not enough special schools to meet the demand. This results in the children and parents having to fight all the time to get a place. 2, that no child should have to wait 20 weeks or more to see if they've been lucky. There is a distinct lack of professionals to carry out these face-to-face meetings. There is a lot of time-consuming paperwork which needs to be filled out correctly, or it ends up being rejected, and the whole process has to start again. The teachers and parents should be given more trust and be given voices, as they are the ones who know the child best. So to sort these problems out, the actions that would be needed is to first provide the funds to get the professional people in place to change the system. It would need the involvement of teachers and parents in deciding what's best for that child. And we need to get the necessary facilities up and running to give these children the support they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Now, Guy.
So I'm probably going to get cut off by the sound man, but we'll do our best. So I've probably spent more time, my team and I, on SEND cases than virtually anything else that we are dealing with as a constituency MP. And that has unquestionably got worse over the last 6 years, but particularly it's got worse post-COVID. If you go and speak to Susie Drake in Hawkesville, you go and speak to Nicola in Walton and all the other schools in between, they will tell you this is a much bigger problem. So government has done some things, and then we'll talk about local authority. Government has given them £8 million to Northumberland County Council, a 10% uplift in March of this year. They're also then, it's run by Northumberland County Council, who are clearly struggling with this. There's no question they are, there's no doubt at all. They then hired, for those of you who've been lucky enough to have your kids at Corbridge Middle School, you will know Jane Kennedy, probably without being disparaging about others, probably one of my best 3 head teachers that I've had to work with for the last 14 years. She's absolutely outstanding. Northumberland County Council have hired her to address the specific problems of SEND in the local area. She's absolutely outstanding. They have great local leadership. She's working with Audrey Kingham and the team at NCC to try and address this. So they've got more money. They clearly have got very good and inspirational leaders who are committed to tackling the problem, and they have an awareness that there is a problem. There is also then things that they're doing locally, whether that is the Fuse building in Plymouth, or whether that is Kirkley Hall, a special education facility that's Kirkley Hall that allows people to develop in the way that they need to do. But there is more to do. To pretend that there isn't an issue with this, to pretend that I don't have constituents who come to me with problems that the lady or gentleman has identified would be wrong. But this is something that has particularly got worse, as many of the problems in schools have got worse since COVID. The origins and understandings of that are also something we need to understand, because it is not simple stuff as to why a society has got a great deal of a bigger problem than it did have prior to COVID. Now, everybody can have a go at the government, but I do genuinely believe there is a full commitment at Northumberland County Council to address this. They have more money, they have the right people leading. I genuinely believe that we can address this, but it will take a little time. Thanks.
And that was amazing. Thank you very much, Guy. William.
Thank you very much. It's an important, vital area. And obviously the question of what particular need a child has is complex. You've got education, you've got physical needs and psychological often. To give Northumberland County Council some credit, I understand that the provision hasn't expanded. The problem is, and this is the problem we have in many areas, is the demand has expanded probably faster. That is the truth of it. Now, I can make a political point, but it's true. As a party, I don't know why, but we seem to have, we're overrepresented in SEN teachers and candidates in this election. I don't know why. So they advise us, and they tell us that we do need more specific centres, specialist centres, and that's a better way of dealing with putting responsibilities on the schools. That's the advice they give us, and that's our policy as a result. But I want to make a broader point here about legislation and the way the government operates. Most local authorities are really struggling with statutory and legally binding responsibilities. I just want to make a point. We have to be honest that just because you make a legally binding responsibility on the local government doesn't mean they have the resources to do it. And in the end, to get back to what I always say, the resources come down to the tax base, which comes down to how we make our living. So this is very important. I think we need more facilities, and we probably will get them. Whether it copes with demand, the rate of demand, is another matter.
Thank you very much, William. And now finally, on this question, Joe.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, there is a crisis, absolutely. It's one that we've been unanimous in the panel recognising, it's one that the Labour Party recognises, and it's one we recognise nationally as well. We want to see more support. We want to see more support both for those who can't attend the schools they're in, those who are still in their main school. We want to make sure that ultimately the support staff who are in place cease to be attritioned out of the system. You know, we've seen it often since COVID. Great support staff, great teachers leaving school because of the rates of burnout. And this is across the public sector, but particularly to SEND cases. We need to make sure that those staff are supported, that the recruitment is correct, so we're getting new staff in, and ensure that we are able to bring in teachers and retain teachers who understand the challenges and who are able to deal with those challenges. We will address those, and I brought Bridget Cook into this constituency, the Shadow Education Secretary. I know Bridget's commitment to SEND. I know the importance that we place on it, and I've spoken a lot with Angie Scott, the county councillor over in Prado, who's campaigned quite heavily on SEND. It's something that I'll be taking forward to Parliament and committing to working, not just working on in a vacuum, but to regularly meeting with practitioners and those affected to make sure that they're getting the best representation in Parliament they possibly can.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the candidate for answering that question and for answering all the questions that we've had. I know there could have been more questions, but I hope there's enough breadth there and flavour there to get a sense of what these candidates stand for, what their responses are, for you to make your own decisions. But now there's a chance for the candidates to sum up and have a final 2.5 minutes each to speak about anything they want to speak about. They can refer back to things that have already been said, or they may have other things to say. So we're going to do that in reverse order, which I've got my maths right, means that William is going to go.
3 minutes.
We're going to give him 3 minutes. So we've got time for 3 minutes. So we don't have to use all those 3 minutes, because if Scotland are playing at the moment, we'll get back to the Scotland game. And the pubs are still open, yeah. So we've got 3 minutes for each candidate to say whatever they would like to say by way of rounding up this conference.
Thanks very much. Don't worry, I'm not going to take the 3 minutes. We like political slogans in politics, and one of our slogans is "It can't go on like this." And I think it can't go on like this, but it will if you continue to vote for the establishment parties. Our job really in this is to provide something decent to vote for, and in particular to give people something that they actually believe in. And I really ought to be the happiest party leader in the country, because most people agree with the SCP on most things. So I'd urge you, it's your choice, but I would urge you to vote for the Social Democratic Party. Vote for what you believe in, if you share that with us. Vote SCP. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
So, I'd like you to judge me on my past record. I hope that you will look at the work that I've done to ensure the rebuilding of the 4 high schools, of supporting for Hawkwhistle School, of supporting all the smaller schools up and down the constituency, all the way from Stamington down to Hawkwhistle and well beyond, and the support we gave to Whitfield and many of the rural schools. I hope you look at the work that I've done with EGO, with Essity, promoting the bunker site, getting Travel Lodge up and running there, ensuring that we have the local jobs that we need in this community. I hope when you look at the record of 7,000 apprenticeships in this community since 2010, I hope you look at the record of the jobs fairs and the promotion of jobs in this area and the 47% reduction of unemployment. I hope you look at the record of setting up the Northumberland Community Bank, which provides savings and loans to those who are most at need. It was set up with the churches, mainly with the Hexham Abbey, with other churches together on an ongoing basis in 2015, and continues to thrive and support those people who are struggling. I hope then you look at and evaluate the difficulties that we've been through, whether it is through COVID, the Ukraine war, the efforts to try and beat Putin. I am absolutely firm in my support of the Ukrainians on an ongoing basis. And you look at the issues that not just this country, but the French have got the same problems we have, the Italians have got the same problems, the Germans have got the same problems. All of us have been affected by low growth, by high debt, by reason of COVID and various other things, and all of the impacts of high energy costs because of the Ukraine war. We have supported people with a £96 billion worth of cost of living support in a post-COVID environment, but it is clear that we need to continue to get inflation down. We need to champion local businesses. We need to make sure this country gets back up and running. I believe we are doing that. We are turning a corner. The economy is growing. There is no doubt that there are better days that lie ahead. Finally, I believe totally in aspiration. Aspiration such that your reach should exceed your grasp. I ask for your support, whether it is a postal voter or on the day of July the 4th. I hope that I can continue to do this job on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. And now, Chris Whaley.
Thank you. I think we can all agree that the past 50, 60 years of the two-party system has failed us all. So I'd like to finish this presentation by going through a few of the policies that I stand for and as the party of the Alliance for Freedom and Democracy stands for, which will help rebuild the country from the grassroots level. The party leader is Dr. Tek Kong, and he has had a long established and distinguished career in the NHS. And this is one area which has failed the British people, with a 7.5 million waiting list now. He's recently retired from all medical active duties, and he's spent more time in the political arena. He saw the troubles in the whole of the health service, but he couldn't change it being there, so he's had to move out into the political arena to try and change it. He believes that the NHS can be saved, but by getting the right people, saving on wastage, encouraging young doctors to stay in the country before, after they've been trained, they all leave. But this can be done without spending too much more money and introducing a multidisciplined approach. One of the other policies which they're very keen to promote is the agricultural policy. This was formalised by a farmer from Durham who is Lucinda Bird, and she is the vice chair and board of members for the ADF. She believes we need to put agricultural studies, outdoor skills, cookery skills into the school national curriculum. And we need to form policies to actively and financially encourage the use of every available plot of UK land and convert it into agricultural production. It would encourage people to acquire skills and the need for agricultural work and to encourage farms to employ more staff. Current government policies are taking jobs away from agriculture and they're putting the risk of our future food security. In fact, when you take a close look at government policies on education, policing, health and the jobs market, we believe this government is completely missing out on one natural resource that can help fix most of the problems we currently have in our country. And that is the agricultural industry as a whole. It is one area that we need to focus our attention on the future. And the long way we can promote it is the jobs, better health, and get the next generation of kids away from this. This is the problem. Kids of the next generation looking into that. Get them back into the field, get them giving a sort of purpose in life that they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now, Nick Cott of the Liberal.
Well, everyone, it's over 100 years since the last Liberal MP, Victor Finney, was elected in Hexham. And since then, there has been nothing else but Conservatives or a Conservative speaker elected at every election. I hope that some of you at least will agree with me that I, Nick, can be your victor in this election, and that it's time to vote for your heart and time to elect me, a Liberal Democrat, to be Hexham's voice in Parliament. I'm very passionate about this area. It's the area where I grew up. I'd be honoured to be your MP. Election should be about who will serve the local community. And I am used to working with people and getting things done for the people I serve. I'm comfortable talking with people locally, across the country, nationally, to get things done. I'll work across party. I will work for you tirelessly, day and night. And the Liberal Democrats, of course, do have some very important policies, which I believe will make a huge difference to people's lives. A fair deal for everyone. And Liberal Democrats have some really important policies around free personal care, which I've mentioned, free school meals for primary school children, and also all children who are disadvantaged. It's really important that we look at the bigger picture as well. Climate change, we need to look at frictionless trade between Britain and the continent. That is the big elephant in the room that no one's mentioned tonight. I have no questions on it either, which is interesting. And that is about Brexit. We need to renegotiate our Brexit deal for the benefit of everyone now and for young people and generations in the future. So that is really important. If you elect a Liberal Democrat, you will get progress on that. And I believe the Liberal Democrats are likely to have many more MPs in the next Parliament. So that's really important. So I'm really proud to be here. I'm delighted to be able to talk through some of these issues. I would like to see us repairing our democracy. We need to have a Parliament which is more representative of the people that it serves, with a new voting system, which means that all votes count, no one has to vote tactically, and that we can have a better Parliament with better outcomes, more consensus and better government. And that's really important. Only the Liberal Democrats in this election can have any remote possibility of delivering this for you, because no other party is really singing from the hymn sheet around doing something positive around all of that. And if Labour has such a huge majority after the next election, which is predicted, who will be there to hold them to account? The Liberal Democrats will argue a very clear case for voting reform, and then for the next general election, we will have a much more representative parliament. Please vote for that. Please vote for our positive policies, and please vote for me. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Nick. And finally, Joe Morris.
Thank you very much. So I'm Joe Morris. As I said at the start, I'm absolutely honoured to be the Labour candidate for this constituency, the constituency I grew up in. I know that this campaign is the job interview, and that the real job, if I'm successful, starts on the 5th of July. I know that delivering as, if I'm elected, Hexham's first ever Labour MP will be incredibly important. I could not ignore this constituency. You know, I still have my family here, I live here, my grandma lives here, my parents do. I still go to the same pub to watch the evening game with my mates from school. I could not ignore this constituency any more than I would ignore any of them. So if you want change, you have to vote for it. Not many votes have been cast. Some of the postal votes have started being returned, but Labour has not won the election. I know that the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats might want you to think they have, but change will only come if you vote for it. Labour lost this constituency in '97 by 222 votes. Now, I was 6 years old, so it's not like I missed knocking on any doors then. But if everyone who wants to see the back of the Conservatives wants to see the back of a century of complacency and failure from the Conservatives in this constituency, I would urge you to vote Labour. Give me 5 years. If I let you down, don't vote for me again. But ultimately, I'm incredibly proud in this campaign to have drawn support from people like Alex Kerr, who led the Tories on Northumberland Council for years, and who has given his public support to me this election. We need that young voice. We need someone who will bring down NHS waiting lists, someone who will agitate tirelessly for this constituency, and someone who will ensure that Hexham is at the heart of what is hopefully the next Labour government. And if Labour do get into government, and it is still an if, ask yourself who will be the best advocate for Hexham. Will it be the first ever Labour MP for the Hexham constituency? Or will it be yet another Conservative return to Parliament by this constituency? I've already been through my local credentials, my local biography, and I'm sure that you've all received many leaflets with them on, so I won't repeat them now. But just safe to say that if you send me down to Parliament, it will be the honour of my life. I will never forget it. I will continue to work. I will continue to be based in this constituency. And I hope that on the 4th of July, or sooner if you've still got your postal vote sitting unfilled, that you feel able to lend me your support.
You're all very naughty.
That was for all of us, wasn't it?
Take it for all of you, yes. The lack of control I have sometimes. If I could just say, first of all, thank you very much indeed to Trinity Methodist Church for hosting us today. It's been great to be in this place, feels quite intimate, and thank you very much for coming today. It's been a really good thing to see you all here. It's always, for me personally, a really joyful thing to get to an election. It always feels something that's exciting that we have this right to vote, which so many people in our world don't have. And to have meaningful and good discourse that we've had tonight feels again an exciting thing to have. To have 5 candidates, all of whom, different people might vote for, because that's the way our policies work and our election works. Feels exciting that we are free to do that. So I think it's important that we always remember that joy of being in a nation which has the freedom to vote in this way. I also am very grateful to the candidates for giving their time today and grateful for you coming today. And I wonder if we could just give one last round of applause to all our candidates for giving their time.